the bill.
Yeah, no, actually, I got it like that. It's actually called a dad hat now. Funny enough. What's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Mika Says Sukaso. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Yes, I know Thanksgiving isn't exactly what we were told it was. We all know this. However, the amount of thanks and appreciation we have for the amount of of things that we have been afforded with. I'm not by no means the richest, and neither is Terry, but we have a roof over our head. No matter how often that roof may be threatened, we might, we got our animals. Terry has his cows, I have my cats and my dog. And we have a loved one. So definitely thankful for that, and hopefully I would in the future love to see the indigenous community get to take that holiday back. I really would. And speaking of dignity and livelihood in a country that is the United States of America, we're actually going to cover something today that I believe should have been covered in great detail, but not the BS narratives that have been really pushed by both the left and the right. It has been extremes on both sides. And as always, whenever I bring Terry here, the story hasn't been told the way it should have been told. History hasn't been observed the way it should be. And me and Terry are going to do our best to break that down. And later on, in another segment I'm doing today, I'm actually going to bring you reports from someone who was on the ground with pictures to prove it in Tijuana, listening to the actual stories, talking about what's actually going on, because she just felt so really just she had to go because both Fox News and CNN are trying to cover the story. They have nobody on the ground. They got the reports wrong on several different occasions on both sides. And so Fiorella decided from the MCSC network, from the show The Convo Couch, decided that it was best if she went and heard the story herself. So that's going to be in a later segment. But before that, let's go ahead and welcome back Terry Baines. What's going on, Terry? It's a pleasure to have you on again.
Hey, it's great to be here. How's the life there on the where it isn't freezing?
It's 66 degrees outside right now.
Oh,
so
you're breaking my heart.
It's kind of cold for me. I have a t-shirt on still, but it's not tank top weather. It was yesterday, and it'll probably be tomorrow, but today it's a little bit chilly. As you probably have seen on Twitter from me, and I've seen from you, I hate how contrived the immigration caravan story has gotten, to the point where people have even begun deflecting off of pepper spray being used, saying it's natural to have pepper spray. And then they're demonizing the parents, saying, I can't believe a parent would carry their kid through the border. What kind of parent would want a better life for their kid? And I'm like, and it's crazy because as a person who's been in a situation, not like that, but not a parent, excuse me, as a person who has been in a situation where my dad was trying to actually get me out of a theater, ironically enough, during a pepper spray situation. Like when you're worried for your kids, you're grabbing them by whatever you can grab them by to get them out or get them over or get them out the door or whatever through the threshold, because it's like, yeah, it's going to hurt a little bit, but I need you to be safe. And I need you to get over. And if anything we know to be true, the safest place in this world when you have somebody with a loaded gun who is not afraid to use it like the United States is behind the barrel of that gun. So that's why people prefer to move here. That's why, even though we have a history of xenophobia and Islamophobia, Muslims like to move here because they know, yeah, if I live here, they're not going to bomb me. Like they're going to bomb their own country to get to me. And so I would love to know your opinion about the current landscape in the debate of what's going on with this immigration caravan and really how it's been posed, in my opinion, as a distraction.
Invasion. It's called a migrant invasion. If you look up in the dictionary, Merriam online dictionary, it's defined as an incursion of an army for conquest or plunder. And bring me back to that one when I space out and forget it. But
I got you.
It's an army with women and children. They have rocks. We have the entire interior military industrial complex. And Trump says he's not afraid to use it. Gave him the orders.
Proudly.
There was a tweet from him. Rocks are basically equal to firearms, which is
that's the same logic they use in Israel. So I'm not surprised by that, by the way.
True. I just what I wanted to kind of try to touch on was we're taking words and bending them around backwards.
Double speed.
Yeah, and that's
Double
usually
speed.
the mark of psychological warfare. And strangely enough, a little bit of research pulled up an article from Nation magazine. I think I
Yeah, you
sent
sent
you the
that to
link
me.
on
Could you?
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that article discusses?
That was a 2016 article, and they did a superb job of explaining. Hillary Clinton had a State Department, she was State Department then, program basically to cover up. And we'll hopefully we can get the link to this article. He describes it a
Yeah.
lot better than I'm doing. But to cover up the fact that we were involved in the coup that was going on down there. It's characterized as the largest.
Down there, where you're referring to?
Honduras.
Honduras.
The actual cover up, information cover up, as I understand it from my research, it was called Honduras Convive with an exclamation point behind it. I have no idea why.
Yeah. And funny enough, people, you know that big joke that went around the internet because Trump tweeted something about, despite the fact that media isn't covering it, said Confifi worked, but nobody knew what it was. And it was kind of like taken as a joke. But notice Confifi worked and Trump was bragging about it in 2017. Honduras is in shambles, and look what comes next.
It was the largest incursion of special operations outside the Middle East as of 2016 is what the nation said.
So essentially, it's a proxy war.
Yeah. So who's the invasion? That's the question here. We've got women, children with rocks against the military-industrial complex, and they're calling that the invasion. That's psychological warfare.
Yeah.
And the article in Nation describes...
Trump keeps using the word invasion. 2,000 people. 2,000. And by the way, there aren't even 2,000 people at the border right now. Most of them, despite what the media is trying to convey, most of the people have accepted asylum in Mexico, by the way. So that's a lie. Saying that there's even 2,000, there's a couple of hundred people left that are trying to get over here because they came to be with their families that are already here. So that's why they haven't accepted the asylum in Mexico, because their intentions had always been to be in America with their family.
That Nation article talks about they are running for their lives. That they have the, you will see in that article, death squads, which is not the first time we've heard death squads talked about from American military industrial complex. And it's a real mixed bag of not just military, but contractors. You know how it. You've seen this before.
Yeah, the civilian contractors that pretty much they're mercenaries. They call them contractors because that's a humane way to say mercenary who will kill whoever we have to get paid.
Well, strangely enough, that word convive is Merriam says fellow feasters is the definition of that word. And feasting on Honduras, I'd say that's a really good description. Lousy security. You're not supposed to use a word that traces back like that.
Well, unfortunately, we don't actually have the ability as human beings to invent like words based off of thin air. We actually have to hear them. We have to have some, it's like an association thing. There's no matter what we try. That's how ultimately things always end up coming back to the original source, right? Because no matter what we try to do, it will always be like any idea that we have will always be based off of something that we have associated to, whether it's in our lives or in the past, or, you know, in some, like you said, it's everybody's eating, and then it's everybody's eating, right? So everybody gets a portion, and what's happening in South America right now, everybody is getting a portion of it. Make no mistake about that.
As of 2016, the Nation article said it is still ongoing. Operation Convive is still underway to cover up what our involvement with the coup was.
So what's your opinion about the convenient amnesia, if you will, of this cycle. Again, it is indeed cyclical at this point, where immigrants are under imperialist rule. They're being terrorized by an empire, any given empire. And then when they get to any given nation, especially the United States, we treat them in a specific way, which it always, a lot of the times it does come down to the politicians, right? Because politicians ultimately don't want to have to deviate from the formula that they created to stay in office, pandering to one specific audience, right? Republicans don't pretend to want black votes. They brag when they get them, but don't pretend to want them because, well, to be honest, they understand that the majority of their base doesn't care about black people or black issues. And so they don't care about like Latin votes either. They care in the sense that they may need them to win in a given area, but make no mistake about it, once again, they don't want to have to pander to immigrants because they will ultimately do what? Lose their base. So what do? You dehumanize them. You make it so that they aren't important. You even, to a degree, make them invisible. And usually the demonization comes after you have not succeeded in making them invisible. So you can't make Hondurans and people coming in from South America and Central America invisible anymore. So what options do we have left? You have Chris
stop
Cuomo
running them out of their country, I guess.
Right? Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice, yes. Right? Chris Cuomo had a tweet yesterday where he said that we shouldn't be demonizing men and women in uniform who are just executing their duties. Terry, you're probably, I know a few examples, but you got a little bit of gray on me, and I have a little gray in my beard, but I'm sure you have substantially more.
I dye this in here though. It's Is
that what you're telling the ladies? This is just,
those are highlights.
I did this to come off more, more established and put together.
I need the authority. I need all the help for it.
Would you like to give people a couple of examples, if you can remember any off the top of your head, where soldiers were just following orders in situations where the other group of people weren't white and they were brown and they were under imperialistic, really under the empire's foot at the time?
The first thing that comes to mind is the Nuremberg principle. That's
what I didn't think about.
Aggressive war is the ultimate war crime. What was the Obama quote? Let me paraphrase it. We hung some folk over breaking the Nuremberg principle. Along with waterboarding, we hung some of the Japanese that we captured over that. That's not that long ago. There are still people from World War II that can tell you their own personal experiences about that.
You know what I think what comes to mind for me, which is actually obviously I was a legal assistant, and one of the stories that we learn about while we're training is why soldiers should not be following just any order and what the consequences will be, because at a certain point, common sense and human empathy and basic humanity has to kick in. The My Lai incident in Vietnam, where soldiers were pretty much told to fire, they killed, they wiped out an entire village because they were following orders.
There's a little piece of hidden history too. One of the best, he's been a guest on Voices a couple of times, Doug Valentine. He was wanted to try to get it in the public consciousness that wasn't one butter bar lieutenant, which is who ended up taking the rap for.
Yeah, that was of course, and we knew that from the beginning.
Program. That we didn't know. That was the entire Phoenix program. Being masked.
When I say that we know, I mean like soldiers. If anybody's been in the military, the butter bar or the private or that junior NCO is who's going to take the rap. The colonel, the admirals, the light colonel, they never take the rap. In fact, they get retired with all their benefits most times.
That's Phoenix program clear back in Vietnam. It goes on down to Central America in the 80s, death squads. It goes on to the Middle East. I'm sure you heard all sorts of stories about what was going on over there that we're still not really being told.
My old first sergeant got out the military after being pegged for sergeant major because of what he saw in Afghanistan when my unit deployed. He got out almost very soon after I did, because I just refused. I was not going to deploy to Afghanistan. I know what we were there for. I was under no disillusion. But you're correct. Another incident where soldiers were just told to follow orders, and they did. Wounded Knee.
Yes.
South Dakota with the Sioux tribe. Wounded Knee.
Yes.
They say that they were going in to confiscate weapons or whatever, and somehow that turned into a bloodbath of over 200 people. Mostly 80% of those people were women and children. And I'm sure that the same narratives got put out. There weren't even women and children there. Those were warriors. Those were grown men. That wasn't an invasion. They threw some rocks. Maybe an arrowhead every now and then, maybe they
rocks were on the arrowhead because they couldn't get any metal. So
yeah, I can literally, in today's world, unfortunately, I can see, like, we can see this. There would be soldiers pointing guns, bullets flying, kids mothers grabbing their kids by their diapers, and people saying, how can a mother treat their child like that? Not, why the hell is there soldiers firing bullets? I don't give a damn if they're rubber bullets. The moment that soldiers saw kids, and if there was one kid there, one bullet flying was wrong. One tear gas canister flying was wrong. If there was one single child, and people think for some reason that this entire caravan is made up to benefit the left for some reason. Who do you think, in your opinion, who do you think that the caravan, the narrative surrounding the caravan benefits most?
I'm going back to a quote from the Nation article that Honduras Convive was, quote, all about erasing the memory of the coup, unquote. Worth taking a look at. There's what's going on here is we have erased that, and now it's being used by another administration from another party to further their agenda.
Yeah.
Sickening. And people don't have any comprehension. This article was in the Nation 2 years ago, but how many people are aware of this?
Yeah.
And if you try to explain it to people, the left is going to hammer you because they're covering for their guy, and the right's going to hammer you because they're covering for their guy.
And that's what it ultimately comes down to.
Yeah.
People telling me there are so many negative narratives going out right now, and both of them. And it's these people that I would consider, prior to this particular incident, there are a lot of people, their visceral emotions and where their mind is, as far as putting their self-interest above everyone else's and anyone else's, at the end of the day, they're getting exposed. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, because I know that some of this literally is an emotional reaction. We are instinctually, we're kind of conditioned to protect ourselves. And
let's go a step further. That professionally, they are being manipulated. That's what psychological warfare is. And when you go to David Kilcullen, the guy who came up with this, he says it's all based on information control.
Yeah.
If you don't have the information controlled, you can't do any of the rest of the pretty toys, the tanks, the helicopters, the tear gas, the napalm.
Yeah. And
this is a pro job. No wonder people are squirreling out. That's what psychological warfare is for.
So my thing is, these people who, like I said, for the most part, I would consider them, even if they're on the right a lot of time, like, we agree on most basic ideas and just at least the logic. Even if we arrive to a different conclusion, a slightly different conclusion, at least we're on the same logical path on how we got there. And the main point that we usually all agree on is mainstream is full of shit, right? I think that's pretty much the most common denominator. So why is it that I hear out of nowhere everyone quoting the Fox News narrative? Because this is why I say the right in this scenario has more to benefit from this entire situation than the left does, than the Democrats specifically. Not saying that
I see it as a 50-50, because the Democrats should be saying.
No, I'm explaining you why it's not 50-50 in this regard. I mean, in this regard, it's not 50-50, and I'm explaining why. The right know that they can dominate off this narrative. The right has, let's be honest, they just lost the House, right? Yeah. We're hearing the stocks dropping every single day, and not even articles saying, if you think that the little miniature stock bump that came from Black Friday sales is legitimate, ignore it, because they're going to go right back down. Jobs are being slashed. We're still in Syria. Trump just bent the knee to Saudi Arabia. He's getting exposed for his total ignorance on climate change. They have not had a significant victory for the right in a very long time. DACA's still here, right? So what do you have left? You have this immigrant caravan that's conveniently. So they're like, oh, this is a Soros-driven narrative. And I'm like, a Soros-driven? Soros paid for the right for Fox News to air this on every single minute of the last week? Fox News doesn't talk about things that don't benefit the right. And I don't think people really get that enough. If Fox News keeps harping on it, it's because it's bullshit. They're literally legalized propaganda. There was a Supreme Court case that was put against Fox News, and it was ruled that they were only allowed to exist not because they're a legitimate news source, but because they're considered entertainment. Because it's bullshit. It is like watching WWE for politics. It's not real. So like when you're putting out this narrative that Trump is the savior of immigrants, or of border security, right? That's what they're saying.
Defending us against the invasion.
But yeah, the invasion of women and children, which, by the way, primarily it was, according to direct sources from the ground, when Obama did this, because he did do this. And people forget about this. Obama was every bit, still to this day, worse than Trump. Because, like I said, I'd rather get shot from the front than stabbed in the back, right? Obama with DACA pretended as if he was the Lord and Savior of all immigrants and how he was compassionate. But let's be honest, this happened with Obama too. Y'all didn't know that, did you? Obama tear gassed people at the border. And that same Fox News pretending like Obama wanted to open the borders for everybody, open up the floodgates. But Obama deported at that point more immigrants than any other president in history, but Fox News didn't cover it. But yet, conveniently, because Trump is doing the deportation now, because Trump is authorizing the tear gas now, because Trump is authorizing this excessive use of force, all of a sudden, everybody knows about it. And you are still buying into the bullshit. That's what's a little bit frustrating from anybody watching from the outside, I think.
It's pro bullshit. These guys are, it's psychological warfare. They have tested this stuff. How can we change people's perception? It was Hillary's Secretary of State that did Honduras con vif, that has erased, again, back to that quote, to erase the memory of the coup. Yep. And that's where we've got no sympathy for women, children being tear gassed because it's an invasion.
And because they refuse to talk about the coup. Because, like, do you know why the women would drag their children to the border, knowing that there's a chance that they could get shot with a rubber bullet? There's a chance they can get tear gas. Because at the country they were just at, across that other border, they were dodging real bullets.
Death squads. That's in the Nation article.
Do you know why these bullets were flying? A lot of it was because of us, right? Like a lot of it, most of it. The propaganda, State Department funded, U.S. State Department funded during Hillary Clinton's reign. I call her a reign because she definitely was like the damn empress of our foreign policy at that time. Same thing with Venezuela. Like, you don't know that this little caravan of 2,000, it's nothing compared to what we've seen. I live in Miami. Do you want to know what the influx of Venezuelans is every year? You think that's an invasion? There are more Venezuelans coming here over a 2-3 week period than that will come from Honduras in the entire year. But you know what? That's not discussed because you can't really demonize Venezuelans like that, because Venezuelans are by and large majority white. They look white. And so that doesn't work for their narrative. But Hondurans have, obviously, they're mostly of native South American descent. And therefore, they're a little bit darker complexion. They fit the traditional mold of what we think of whenever they think of or talk about an illegal alien. I talked about this morning, actually, on Twitter. I was saying it's funny because tens of thousands of Eastern Europeans, of white Eastern Europeans, come in this country illegally every year. Not even a tenth. That's actually an under exaggeration. It's much more than that. As you know, clearly, Trump's wife being one of them, right? We never hear anything about that. It's never discussed. You're never considered a threat. And what pisses me off more than anything else is when people say, this is about laws. We care about the laws. But I'm like, if you care about the laws, how come when Eastern Europeans and white Eastern Europeans come in, y'all have no problem? But all of a sudden, it's about the laws when it comes to treating people with common decency and humanity. You understand what I'm saying?
Law.
International law. Yeah, we're part of the Geneva. We're part of the Geneva Convention. They are seeking political asylum.
We are breaking the law if we don't.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
But they pretend
that's getting hammered down.
They pretend it's about legality when it's not. Like, and I would just wish it would be. I have more respect for people who really just kind of like own up to it and be like, they just don't like Mexican people. They don't like Hondurans. They don't like anybody who comes from that part of the country because of their racist predispositions based off the conditioning from society that they lived in. I would have more respect for those who do that than try to hide behind the legality when they clearly have no idea what the legality of migration under these circumstances is. Because like Terry just pointed out, it was the largest military occupation since we've been in the Middle East. That's
special operations.
Yeah, special operations. So even worse.
Yeah. Yes.
That's where the real guns and the real bullets and the real bombs are fired.
Can I throw some good news in here for a second?
Absolutely.
Kilcullen again. Good old David Kilcullen. He's an Australian, and he's who put together the plan for coin, and everybody was into coin. Everybody knew it was going to work, except
can you explain
to
the audience what coin is?
Yeah, sorry about that. Coin is counterinsurgency. Counterinsurgency. CONIN. It's a lot of people think it's counterintelligence because that was what was exposed back in the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. That's not correct. That's only one instrument in the symphony of psychological warfare.
Yeah, true.
It's so Kilcullen is who literally wrote the book on counterinsurgency, and that is still. We just had a guy that taught history at West Point on Voices. That is still the operative. What's going on here? Secretary of Defense right now is who?
Is it Bolton still?
Did the general go away?
Oh, Mad Dog Mattis?
Yeah, that's
one.
He also wrote the book on counterinsurgency. Another one.
Wow. Okay, so I did not know that.
So this is a major. That's the plan.
Oh yeah, that was Mad Dog Mattis. In case you all didn't know, was the guy who openly admitted, yeah. Every time we said Syria had weapons of mass destruction, we were lying. We don't even know if they actually committed those chemical attacks. There was no evidence of it. But he looked straight at the camera and said, we're going to find some. Straight like that. He said those words.
Information control.
We're going to... Exactly.
That is the good news here. Because according to the guy that wrote this evil plan, and excuse me for stepping out of objective journalism, but this is evil. This is I
think objectively it is evil.
White. Yes, I can't see any other description for what's going on right now. But the good news here is he says there is a weak spot in this plan. Obviously, since it never works, there is a weak spot, and he identified that weak spot. And he says until they've got information control, and then that means control the information, like erase that there was a coup in the Honduras. Until they have that, as long as the truth is still getting out and being defended, they're losing, and we're winning.
If you're complaining about immigration, you're not talking about the coup of Honduras, then you'd have nothing to complain about. You have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, that's just the nicest way to put it. Terry's nicer than I am, so he isn't going to say it, but I will.
I just worry about getting sued.
Yeah, right. I'm long gone past that. But you know, if you're in Europe, because I know Brexit was primarily surrounding the immigration issue, and if you're in Europe and you're bitching about immigration, but you're not holding your neoliberal leaders accountable in that regard about their involvement in the U.S.'s little oil games overseas,
that refugee crisis that was caused by our wars,
by our war
under Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely.
Syria.
And all of a sudden, they don't. What's crazy is if you don't believe that they're seeking political asylum, because this is crazy to me, the same people who swear that these Hondurans aren't seeking political asylum were also the same ones who said that the Syrians weren't entitled to political asylum. Like, well, what the hell is like the definition of political asylum now? I don't even know what it is. What do y'all qualify as political asylum? Is it if you don't speak Spanish and if you don't wear a hijab and if you don't like use a Quran, then you can come here? That's pretty much because whenever South Africans were planning on, South Africans, the white ones who are getting held accountable for, you know, stealing the land, that like the apartheid is crazy because there are people who are still alive who had their land stolen from them. And they were really surprised when the Africans were like, no, we want our fucking land back, bro. Give us that shit back. Like, they were really surprised by that. They're like, there were people who were like bleeding their hearts out saying, we'll take the South African white people. We'll take them. We'll have them in our homes. I'm like, this is insane. This is insane to me. And
how about another one from current events? Assange today.
Oh man. Yeah.
Political asylum.
Political asylum.
But is it
he's entitled to it.
You legally have to. It is international law.
It's Geneva Convention, right?
Law.
It's a Geneva Convention. I want to say if it's
I think we need an international lawyer to be able to pull this together, but I'm sure that would make a good show too, because really there's so much disinformation. It would be great to get. And what is the straight story here? What is asylum? Is it illegal to turn these people back because they got the wrong color skin, or because they've got rocks, or because that there's fill in the blank? It's their cat. Like if it's Julian Assange. And this is and he lost his cat, by the way.
What?
Yeah, he had to send the cat home because it was directly threatened that they were going to send it to the pound, according to his lawyer. And you could check that out with his lawyer, but when you go to Assange Legal today, as of a few minutes ago anyway, it says there's the account activity, one of those big warnings that it may be limited because of unusual activity. They've throttled back. You can't even see what Assange's lawyer is saying today.
That's crazy.
While they were trying to.
That's heartbreaking, man. I don't know what I would do without my babies in that situation. It's already hard enough.
Okay, but back to the good news is, as long as anybody is still defending the real story, then they have not gotten information control. They are losing.
Absolutely.
So one voice, if it's just one single person saying no.
One voice can change everything, guys. It's the truth.
That's what the guy that wrote the plan says.
This happened. Remember, this you think it happened this time. This isn't the only time. You think it's the only time that this is an issue. It's happened with the Chinese when they were coming here because they were being persecuted by Great Britain at one point. And then they moved here for labor. It's happened to the Irish who were also being persecuted by Great Britain. Yes. Starting to see a little pattern there. Pretty much the entire 1800s and the early 1900s, the Italians were also being demonized, the Sicilians specifically, because they were considered the brown Italians. The
dehumanizing term then was WAP for the Italians.
For the Italians,
stands for without papers.
Yep.
Illegal immigrants.
And people are under this impression that all these immigrants came here legally. That's not true. Most of them actually came here undocumented and eventually became legal but a lot of people never, especially because they lived in like the New Yorks, Chicago, big cities where you could get away without having papers pretty much for your entire life. It's still the case in New York, to be honest with you, because it's about money talks and bullshit walks in those areas. So
it seemed to have worked.
People are a lot more forgiving and diverse in New York because people are like, I don't give a shit what color you are. Can you work and can you help pay the bills? All right. So this isn't the first time we've seen this, and this narrative has been successful every single time because people believe the mainstream narratives and they believe that their problems are because of some scapegoat that is created from some mainstream nonsense that they're then using to profit, and fearmonger so that you can, so that you feel like, they're doing the bidding of the people who pay the bills.
but it's temporary.
And it's
Again,
always
it never
temporary.
works.
It'll be somebody else next time. It'll be somebody else next time. It will.
Well, us Irish finally got a president with Kennedy, and we got another one with Reagan. So that kind
first
of
Catholic too, right?
I believe so.
It was a big deal at that time, I heard.
Kennedy, yes, another major theme in American.
And can I just say really quick too, and as a black male who has seen the long-lasting effects of like just slavery and racism and what it looks like when a country puts all their efforts into making sure that you look less than a human for an extended amount of time. If anybody can relate to that type of plight, it is the Irish people. The Irish were in a lot of ways demonized, very much so, like black people were in America. It was an entire psychological operation to validate the horrors that were happening to the Irish by the hands of the British. That's why it's a little upsetting to me when I hear people who are white and of Irish descent just casually shrug off incidences like this, because I'm like, you're not even 2 or 3 generations removed of your great grandparents being here because of very similar circumstances of an empire who wouldn't leave well enough alone and was just constantly in other people's business. And it's if you're silent this time, the next time, maybe not this time, maybe not even the time after that, but it will be your people. It will be the people that you finally do have some associative identity to with, and you're gonna wish that you spoke up before. That's all I'm gonna say. But ask those South Africans who all of a sudden cared. Everybody cared about Africa. You know how much war and desolation goes on in Africa at the hands of multiple empires. And all of a sudden, when white South Africans lose their land, everybody's like, "Oh my God, we got to pay attention." Can you believe that? Because we really never seen minorities, or at least international minorities, rise up and fight back and take back from the empires that have restricted them and limited them, but like limited the use of their own land, right? And we've never seen that. So
De Beers is a South African name, but De Beers is owned by the Rothschilds. Got to have those diamonds. Yeah. So once again, what were they really worried about the South Africans?
No, it's about believe it or not, the South African apartheid works a lot like the Cuban apartheid that was going on that people didn't know was going on. We had companies, subsidiaries in South Africa, just like we had in Cuba, because of the resources in those various areas. The reason that we defended, we were on the side of, we were fighting with, we were teamed up with the perpetrators of the apartheid against Nelson Mandela, was the same reason we were on the side of Batista, teamed up with Batista, were fighting with Batista against Fidel Castro, because he was anti-apartheid. And when you're anti-apartheid, there's a lot of other things that come with that, right? You're usually anti-imperialism, you're anti-segregation, you're pro-people, you're pro-universal health care, you're pro-diversity, all the things that the elites hate because it's been a bunch of old white men running the world for quite a long time. And they like it that way. So it's like I said, exactly, the demonization of these groups benefit one specific group, and that is the elites. That's what you all have not gotten yet. And we will continue to go in a downward spiral. Not only here, the end of the empire will come a lot faster until you all start getting.
Never works. That all the way back to the Philippines. That's where the term for guerrilla comes from. The Philippine insurrection. We were waterboarding people in the Philippines back in the turn of that century.
Yep.
South Africans. That was where the term concentration camp is coming from.
That's new. I did not know that.
British. The Brits again, trying to protect those diamonds. Concentration camps were invented during the Boer War, turn of the last century, but it never works. Mandela did get out of jail. Mandela did become, is the term president?
Did he
become the president? Yes.
First black president of Africa.
They held him up for a long time, but bless him, he persevered. And that's back to the weak spot in the guy that invented this horrible plan, Kilcullen. is, as long as we defend, we don't even have to defend successfully. We just have to continue to defend. And I'm inferring that. I don't know that I'd like to talk to him sometime. Boy, would I like to talk to him sometime.
All right. So we went a little bit over time, but it was well worth it. Thanks so much for coming on again, Terry. Greatly appreciate it. Tell people where they can find you at again. You're on Twitter.
We are voices.network, and that's an audio show. You've been teaching me video. I hate it.
Been trying to. That's why he has a haircut this time, guys. He's learning.
Me too.
Getting them up to speed.
So voices.network, and that'll bring you up to us, although we haven't done an audio show in a little while. About time to do one. And on Twitter, you've got the link over there at MCSC. We are kind of part of the MCSC network. We just haven't officially gotten going yet. But a sister station.
Definitely part.
I consider we're a sister station. So, yes, thanks for having us. It's great working with you again. I wish I could have talked to the person who's actually eyes on. Sometimes I miss being
Fiorella. Well, I'll definitely. Yes. I can. So what I'll probably end up doing is I'll end up linking you guys together so that y'all can have each other on. Because
hopefully we can do a follow up to this as for. What did you see, and what does that fit in with the overall that we've just been talking about?
Absolutely. Sounds good, man. Well, thank you all so much for coming on. Like I said, people.
Thank you.
Just one thing before I go. Stop buying into the mainstream narratives. Stop it. I know it's easier. I know it's easy to conflate. I know it's easier because one of the reasons why I think we do this, just very briefly, I think we do this because we want to believe that we're somehow exceptional, that they put themselves in that situation. If I was in that situation, it would be different. Therefore, the result would be different. It would be more favorable for me. And it's not true. It's simply not true. If you were in that situation, you would likely have the same result. You would likely do whatever you could and do whatever it took to make sure that your family could have a better life, no matter what part of the country you're in. So remember that the next time you're quoting a statement that came from Fox News, that Fox News is vehemently agreeing with, they're holding a party. I remember whenever we were talking about the Caravan, it was like a Super Bowl Sunday. They had a panel with the crowd in the back discussing this. It's a show for them. They thrive on our apathy.
Mockingbird. It's also professionally done.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. They thrive on our apathy, and yes. they can be defeated by empathy, exactly, which comes from the truth. And if we continue to push the truth and we continue to have empathy for our fellow human beings, no matter what language they speak, no matter what they look like, and we remember that, at the end of the day, despite the fact that the realities of race, ethnicity, and others are real, we are all human, and we all want to have a better life for our family. We all want to be able to have the same equity of opportunity, and we want that for our families. And so I'll leave you with that, and thank you all so much for tuning into this segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And always remember, people, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.